G'day and welcome back to another episode of Tomo's Tune-Ups. On this episode we are going to be finishing off the installation of a steering column plus a couple little fiddly bits on the Black Mosquito. So welcome back to the channel, folks. Thank you very much for tuning in to another episode of the Black Mosquito. So as you can see, the car is coming along quite nicely and there's a few little things I need to address before I keep moving forward with the car. So the first one is how loosely this steering column is fitted. As you can see, it is kind of not really tight, it's pretty loose. This isn't the issue that we're actually going to be rectifying. At the bottom of the steering column, there is a bush that we're going to be replacing. The original ones were felt, but they did do a reproduction of it with a polyurethane sleeve. So what we need to do is pull the steering column out, separate the inner from the outer columns, put the little sleeve over there, put it back together, and then away we go. Not only that, but we also have these little brackets to fit, which if you saw in a previous episode, you noted that these were not fitted when we put the engine mounts in for the rear subframe, or the rear subframe mount, should I say. So those are going to be going in, plus a couple of little things just here and there, just to finish off. So without further ado, let's jump straight into it. All right, so in one of the previous episodes when I installed the door lock assembly, one thing I did forget to mention was the check strap. So this is a brand new one. The old one was pretty average, to be honest, and I figured, well, for what it's worth, let's get new ones. And there's also a pin that goes through here that attaches it there, which then you just need a split pin to go through. So this will just come in from behind here. This is only available on the Rover Minis. The other ones, they run the check strap from the bottom of the door over. So what I'm gonna do is probably just fit it like that, and then we're gonna put the pin in through the top. And here's one I prepared earlier. So I'm gonna put the pin in and then probably just pull the door all the way open. That way it'll line up properly with where it needs to be. So just line that up. Hopefully the paint isn't too thick where it doesn't allow it to not go in. Yep, sweet. There we go. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here, because the paint is rather thick by the look of it, I'm gonna grab a pair of pliers. We're going to put a rag at the top and the bottom and then just pinch it just to be able to pull it down so it actually goes through there properly and enables it to be able to go through. But before we do that, I just remembered we do have these new gaskets. These gaskets go on the body side, I believe, to stop the door from slamming up against the A-pillar here as well. So because we know that pin is going to be rather tight, we just give it a bit of a jiggle. We're going to pull that out. There are two different ones as well. So we were going to talk about these on an episode of Minisport, but essentially there are two different ones. There's a left and a right. So as far as I'm aware, one side is higher than the other. So you might just be able to see here. So the back side here is taller and then the front side is a bit lower. So with this, what we're going to do is we're going to use, this is going to be the left side. So the side that's going to be closest to the door is going to be the smaller side. And then the side that's closest to the door seal or inside the cab is going to be the larger side. So that's just going to sit directly on through here. Hopefully I haven't dug myself a bit of a grave here. It is just rubber or foam, sorry, just rubber. So that'll sit on there just like that. So I'll sit just there, and then we're going to grab the pin back in through there, just line up with where it needs to be. Yep, and that should be enough for us to be able to push it in, and that way when the door closes, it's not going to do any damage to the striker, to the pin, or to the bodywork. All right, so here I'm just using a pair of combination pliers that I've extended, and just using an old rag. We should be able to squeeze that down far enough. Yep, there we go. And then we just want to squeeze it a little bit further just to be able to get it past that lip. Yep. And then that's pretty much it. So that's fitted how it needs to. All we now need is just a just a split pin down the bottom to stop it coming out. I really doubt it's ever going to move, simply because it is quite snugly pressed inside there, but just to be safe. So I just have to make sure that nothing secures this little grommet just here, because there is no holes in it whatsoever, but there are like kind of marked holes top and bottom. So I might see if there was like a little clip or something that goes in there just to hold it. But anyone in the comment section that knows anything about these, please just let me know, because I would really like to know, being the first time I've ever worked on a Rover Mini or the later model Minis. So before we go further, let's just check it to make sure the door actually opens and closes properly. Yep, so it's closed and then open. Fabulous. All right, cool. So now that's going to stay open. Yeah, I would say there's got to be something there to hold it, just to make sure that it doesn't flop around. So that's done. Let's get on to the next part and get that steering column out. All right, so one of the best things about the Classic Mini is you don't need a great amount of tools to be able to work on them. So all we're going to need here is just a 1/2 inch socket, I believe, and probably just a ratchet, and we should be able to get this column out of here. Actually, not even that. These are shear bolts. So they've just put the nut on the top side of it, which we might actually see if we can renew these. If not, we can convert it to just a standard nut and bolt style setup. And there appears to be a plate as well down underneath here. So we'll wait and see when we get that out. All right. So from what the customer had told me, it's a bit of a pain to be able to get this out. And that actually came out quite easily. So let's have a look at this and see what it is exactly that we need to do. So with most Boss style conversion kits, from a standard steering wheel to a sport steering wheel, whether it be bigger or smaller, whatever it may be, there's generally a heap of bolts around the outside. So in our case, I think there's 6 Allen key bolts. On the back of them is a nylock nut. So we do need probably an 8mm spanner or even just a 1/4 inch to be able to hold it while we loosen it off. Once you've done that, it will be a nut on the inside. You then undo, which then releases the Boss kit from the actual inner shaft, and then you can take the steering wheel off. So once we've done that, we can then separate the inner and outer shafts. All right, so I managed to get that ring off from the inside. The steering wheel then just comes off. And then you should have, yep, the little horn assembly. So generally there's like a little tab that sits on there where you can connect it to the horn. And then we have the ultimate nut on the inside. So we're just going to grab our rattle gun and just quickly nip that off. And then that inner shaft will just release from the outer shaft. All right, so that wasn't overly tight, which isn't really great. Now we can realign this once we have it off, so it shouldn't be that much of a drama if it's not lined up 100% to begin with. Now we just need to push it out from the Boss kit. So I'm just going to grab a soft face hammer, push down the inside here, which should then push it out from the Boss on the outside. There we go, just with a good couple of hits, she came straight off. Now, like I said, you got the inner and the outer shaft. That will come out just like that once it gets past that middle bit. There we go. All right. So I believe this is the piece here that we are replacing. All right, so off camera, I made a late night phone call to a couple of the guys at Minisport. Turns out I'm a complete noob and a dingus. The reason for that is the bush that we were trying to fit is only a replacement for Australian Classic Minis. Now, the reason why that only fits the Australian Classic Mini is, like I'd said before, where the bottom of the steering column shaft is down here. On Grace, she has a piece of felt that rubs along here. Now, this is a direct replacement for that to ensure that you don't have to use that felt anymore. It is quite thick and it takes up a lot of the space. So this is what enables it to run true, but also not create any vertical movement up and down, which Grace currently has. So this one here is the correct part in which it is fitted. So we might actually get a new one of those while we've got it apart. And the one that sits at the top, this one here, this one doesn't look too bad, but for the fact that we've got it out now, we might as well replace it. That one just sits at the top there as well. If that has any sort of movement, which actually that does, even when it's pressed in there, it is plastic, it is going to wear over time. So like I said before, if you are going to go to this degree and pull everything apart, get stuff machined, replace components, if there's other things that you can change out at the same time, check it. If it's not an interference fit, if something seems to be worn, if you're unsure, throw it over your right shoulder, order a set of new ones and replace it while you're there. So now that I've made myself look like an absolute dingus, I'm going to place that order online and they should be here within the next sort of couple of days. So what we're going to get onto now is working out where these little plates go, the little ones that I showed you before. So let's just have a quick look. This one here. So for those of you playing along at home in the UK or own a later model Mini will know exactly where these go. If you don't, I'm about to show you. So let's turn the camera around and I'll show you guys. This is where it goes, directly here. That enables it to have a little bit of rigidity and support with the bottom subframe mount. So what I need to do is loosen off both of these, probably put one end in, maybe try and get it somewhat tight, and then just bend this one around and align that. The reason for that is if I take both of them out, you'll probably find it'll twist, it'll move, and then it'll be an absolute pain to line up. So this is gonna be the next job. I might need to wait till my little apprentice Kev is around to help me out with this if I can't do it. If not, then we can move on and jump onto something else. Well, what an absolute pain in the ass this thing was to fit. It looks pretty simple, and the reason why it was a pain in the ass is I'll show you in just 1 second, because I had to get down underneath the car and be able to fit the bracket. I'll just get the torch so you can see the bracket down under there. So where that bolt is at the top, where it's coming through, one there and then one on the other side. This would have been a lot easier if I had the subframe out, because of those 2 extra bolts that come in vertically. It was just a little bit hard to be able to get in, but I managed to do it. I still have to do the other side, so yippee me. And then after that, I'm going to grab the rest of the components we need. Oh, sorry, I'm just killing myself here. The rest of the components for the steering column, and then we can put the column back in. So I'm going to keep working on the other side. I'm going to get the components from Minisport, not this one, but the correct one that we need, and then we'll keep cracking along with the episode. All right, so we are back. It's been quite a few days, but I now have the new parts available from Minisport. So we have the upper bush and we have the lower bush. So let's jump straight into it and I can show you guys how to do it. Okay, so this becomes a lot easier when everything is pulled apart and you can actually see what you're doing. So we have the top of the column and we have the bottom of the column just down here. So the top, we know it's the top because that's where the key is going to go. The larger end of this is going to face the top. So I've just been stuffing around with this. That's why it's a little bit dirty. It is brand new though. We're going to line that up with those holes. Now I believe the holes are actually offset, so it's not going to line up 100% on both sides, but it will just push in there, I believe, just like that. I don't think it goes any further. You can try, but I'm pretty sure that's, yeah, where it'll bottom out. So that one is now fitted. Now the bottom one goes on the bottom of the rack, sorry, on the bottom of the column. So this is a particular part that only fits the later Rover style Mini. So it's a bit of a triangular piece, and that's just made out of nylon. So toss that over your right shoulder and then grab the new one. So that'll just sit directly on there like that. So it's just got a little opening. You just slide it over there, boom, done. And away you go. So this is going to help prevent any movement from the base of the column. So when it's sitting in there, it's not going to move up and down. And then once this one's fitted, that's actually going to help also prevent it from having vertical movement. So at either end, if it's not supported with a bearing, it does need to have a nylon bush. Essentially now we grab the 2 items, slide them together, line that up down the bottom just to make sure it actually goes in. You'll probably find that because it is new, it will be a little bit firm to get in, so you'll just need to give it a bit of a squeeze to pull them together. I'm just going to actually pull that down just a fraction. It does have a lip just at the end here in which you could probably have the bush sit up against. So I might just see if that's going to run there true. Yeah, it probably will. But in saying that, on here, on the shaft itself, it's got a gloss section, which is likely where it's been rubbing on the inside of the old bush. So we're going to try and sit it about there, compress it together. Let's just have a look. Yep, squeeze it in. We're just going to have to pull it in and out a couple of times, I think, to be able to get it to fit properly. I'm going to just try and fit it with it a little bit further down the shaft, and then that way when it goes in, it'll probably seat in there. That way it'll pull it in there nice and square. If not, it may just have to jam it in by pushing it down. Okay, so I don't think that's really going to be the end of the world, to be honest. It looks like it's in there quite firm, and it is down the bottom of it. So you can see just here, it is protruding. However, it seems to be in there quite snug. I might try and push that down a little bit further, depending how much more it needs to go in. That top bush has actually just jumped out, so I'm just going to refit that. It should be okay to get it in there with it like that. Yep, cool. And then that'll just pull directly down in there just like that. I'm just going to grab a screwdriver just to line up those holes. It doesn't really need to be 100%. As I said, it is offset the bush, so we should be fine to be able to have it just a little bit off center. But as I said, on this side here, it's not going to line up. On this side here, it looks a lot better. So now that the steering column is done, we do also have two new bolts that are going to go in here. Now these are what they call shear bolts. We haven't spoken about these yet, but we will on another episode of Tomo's Tune-Ups through Minisport. These are a shear bolt. The reason for a shear bolt is to help protect valuable components such as control units and steering column locks. The reason why they use them is because when you tighten this up, it'll actually snap off here. So at the smallest part, it'll actually shear the top of the bolt off, meaning in order for you to remove this, you do need to use an angle grinder or special tools or even drill it out to be able to get it out. Now, if you can imagine someone breaking into your classic Mini or even your car, in order for you to hear them get in there, you know, it might be quite silent. They might just pick the lock and get inside the car. But for them to change the barrel over, they're going to have to use electric tools. You're going to have to use drills. In all that noise, you're likely to hear them try and steal your car. So by using these, it just makes it longer for someone to try and steal your car compared to the good old days, well, days 30, 40 years ago, where you could just use a spoon to start someone's car and off you drive. These new shear bolts are used in many different applications to help people, deter people, thieves, crooks, whatever that may be, from stealing a modern day vehicle. These are also a one-time use only, meaning obviously you can only use it one time, because once you tighten it up to a certain torque setting, it doesn't matter what torque setting you do it up to, simply because as you tighten it up, it is just going to shear directly off. So you just keep tightening it until it stops, and then it will just snap. So that's pretty much it. But these are a one-time use only. I believe, yeah, so I got 3 of these. These must be new old stock. That one probably looks like the newest. This looks like it just came from the bottom of the Titanic, but so long as it does the job, I will get it cleaned and we can stick it back up in there. There are 3 shear bolts. One needs to go through the column just here, so through the column brace. So this one looks like it's, just a nut on the other side. We'll adjust that later. And then the other 2 are going to go up that hold the column to the actual cross member piece that goes here underneath the dash. So let's stick these back in the car, and then let's call an episode and start on the wiring. Alright, so now we've assembled the steering column. We can now reassemble it inside here. I've just had Kev come around and give me a hand, so he's at the back of the car just jacking it up. Now, it's not going to matter too much as to where the spline goes at the bottom, simply because as you turn it around, you can then just align it with the bolt as to where it needs to go, so we can come back to that later. So now we just need to follow the reassembly process. Now, from memory, this bracket up onto here where it attaches, it does need to go up under the 2 legs of the pedal box. So what I'm going to do is just take that bolt out, that adjustment bracket. And you can also buy from Minisport, which I'm sure most Mini enthusiasts have seen, the adjustable bracket for the height of the column. We do have one. The customer, as you saw, is quite tall. Like he's, I think, like 6'1" or 6'2". So it is handy to have it adjustable, but I don't think we're going to be doing it in this build, just as per his instructions, which is fine. You know, there's no right or wrong. You don't have to do it. So we're just going to line up this bracket and then reattach it where we need it to be. So while I'm going to be doing this, Kev's just going to jump in the car and just put in the handbrake cable guide. So I'll get him to do that while I keep going with the power steering, or sorry, with the steering column, should I say. Right, so last thing we're going to do before we wrap up the episode, I did just realise that I do have to tighten up that nut, but in order for me to properly tighten it, I need to have the car on the ground. So one thing we didn't know when we put this together originally, we just ran bolts through the bottom of the subframe just down in here. Turns out there are two brackets, one on either side. So this side is the side we're yet to do. That's the bracket that Mr. Kev, the hand model, is showing us. That goes through here and it creates a bit of support as well, as it's got a bit of steel between them. So you're going to punch the bolts out, put the plate in, and then put the nuts on the other side with a couple of new washers. Now, we've actually got luckier on this one compared to the previous side, because that literally just went straight in with little to no effort, which is great. Previously, on the opposite side, I had to sit there and wiggle it back and forth to be able to get this bracket in, but good thing we've managed to do that. We also need to get a rubber grommet for up here as well, which is the opposite side of the steering rack, which I'd imagine for a left-hand drive vehicle, obviously that's where it's going to go, but on this side we do need to find a rubber grommet for it. Alright, so before we wrap up the episode, we're just going to finish off a couple of the door trim pieces. Kev's jumping onto the passenger side, I'm just doing the driver's side. Essentially we need to just mount the locking mechanism. Now, because this didn't have any plastic trims in it whatsoever, we've got these little grub screw clips, or plastic trim clips. There are two different sizes, and I think we've got the right ones. There are little square ones, sorry, with a square head. The other ones are square as well with a round head. So it depends on what you need to do. Most of these should fit most classic Minis as far as I can see. I think the ones in the UK list a different part number to what we have here in Australia through Minisport. So I'm hoping that this is going to work. Essentially, we're just going to put the larger ones at the back, even though it's quite loose. It is just going to hold it there. It's not actually going to be moving it around too much, so we should be okay, fingers crossed. And then I did have a screw just kicking around here somewhere. Yeah, so just one of these screws that was originally just sitting in there with a bit of Sikaflex. So we'll put the screws in the top, the screws in the bottom, and we should be right to finish off this episode and then get on to the wiring in the next one. Alright, I don't think they're the right plugs for it, because when I put this screw in there, yeah, the whole thing just turns, so they're definitely not right. We're gonna have to do a bit of research into those and work out exactly which plugs and screws we need to be able to run this. Look, it shouldn't be really that much of a drama, only because we could just put any screws in there and it should be fine, but we want to make sure that the clips that we're using behind there are actually going to hold it correctly. Alright, so after a little bit of investigating, we found that the screws that we had are wrong. We're just going to have to work through, figure out what it is exactly we need with the car, with the plugs, the screws, all the little fittings. But it's not super detrimental to do this right now. We just wanted to kind of have everything together, that way everything is working correctly. But we got the steering column in, we got the handbrake cable in, we got the front subframe mounts in, and we're pretty much ready to start the wiring. So we're going to start running all the wiring through there. We'll lay it out with the old one and the new one side by side, so we can label everything, cross all over, start putting it in. Once it's in, we can then start reassembling everything, make sure it all works. So until next time, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode of Tomo's Tune Ups.